What's going on, community? I'm sure everybody's heard the news. This is the most bullish thing we've seen in some time. It's absolutely madness. You can see it all over Twitter, all in the charts. RH has now responded to the SEC's complaint in a formal way. We see all the documentation on it, his legal team. So I want to break into a few specific things, but just a quick overview from the beginning. RH and his legal team have filed a motion to dismiss. They've laid out several very strong points why. Just again, off the top for people who maybe aren't that familiar with the process. One, it is an extremely well written, well cited motion. I know that sounds like a very standard thing, but it is not the case. If you look at many things that are filed from even top tier lawyers or things even coming directly from the SEC, including the action taken against RH, it's not particularly well researched and laid out. It doesn't necessarily have some of the notations and annotations that you'd expect. They're not fantastically written documents. I promise you this motion is. It is extremely clean and well delivered, and that makes a big difference. And then the team itself, it is an absolute just gladiator camp mob squad of the who's who in the legal world. These are very accomplished, very talented, very experienced people. This might be the strongest legal team I've actually seen assembled and on one side of a table, and that's not exaggerating. So again, just overall, I think the bullishness is the quality of the team, seeing a formal response, a motion to dismiss, the quality of the motion itself, all that stuff is absolutely fantastic. So there's the bullishness is not unwarranted. Now I do want to dive into a couple of the points, but I just want to kind of get that that top layer handled. It is absolutely incredible how well this is done and how strong that team is. Now on to a few of the actual points they lay out. The first one is challenging jurisdiction, and this is really important. Now, these are a few points that I've talked about previously, and I'm really, really glad they were delivered the way they are from the current legal team. So the challenge on jurisdiction is a big one. The SEC in the U.S. tends to want to expand their jurisdiction anytime U.S. citizens are affected, and that's not really the way things are applied. So if you look in the complaint, the very first thing they challenge is jurisdiction, and they basically go through and say the accounts, RH himself, payments, transactions, none of these things were directly aimed or happened inside of the U.S. That's a really, really big one when it comes to, again, to the SEC, right? Their purviews on U.S. securities laws. The other is I think that also responds to a particularly loose and weak argument in the original motion, which was essentially that because a lot of these happened on Uniswap, and Uniswap Labs is actually tenured in the U.S. and New York, that was a big part of the claims. It's asinine. It's a terrible argument. So I'm glad that they did challenge jurisdiction. I think that's a big part of this. The other two major pushbacks, and then I'm going to get to the closing one, was investment contract. I've talked several times. In fact, my last PulseChain update, I highlighted this, that Coinbase is challenging the term investment contract. And I know a lot of us would think this is a very simple thing. I promise you for the SEC, it's not. An investment contract is both an investment that has a contract. So the SEC has tried to expand that terminology to something that it was not originally intended for. So when you go all the way back to the 1930s Securities Acts, they were specifically around investment contracts where you granted someone money under a contractual agreement that they were going to do XYZ thing and that you were going to share in those profits. Again, now you get into the Howey test, right? A common pool of money with effort solely from the work of others, all these things, right? These come from the idea of an investment contract. Most things in crypto do not have investment contracts, but they've still tried to slap that securities label on these things. That is incorrect in my opinion, and I'm very glad that Coinbase and RH's team have raised this point. It's extremely important. The other one that comes from that again has been filed by Coinbase is the major questions doctrine. And again, keeping very simple. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just trying to condense this, make it very digestible. Is the SEC can't just say that this thing is now in their purview. So it's very, very important that we just say, hey, this is just not your claim. This is not your business. This is outside of your jurisdiction. So I think clarifying both, again, the terminology around investment contract and the major questions doctrine about whether the SEC actually has congressional approval to actually take on the enforcement acts they are is very, very important. This also goes into, just quickly, if we look at one of the last times that Gary Gensler, the chairman, spoke in front of the Congress, he says, you guys don't want me cherry picking what's a security. You don't want me sort of foreshadowing. but they have. Like that's what these enforcement actions are. They've specifically said things were securities for without giving clear reasons why. And when even asked about something like Ethereum, they choose not to answer directly. Again, this really leads into this enforcement by regulation by enforcement, and also what we've seen with like choke point 2.0, that they're clearly maliciously going after the crypto industry. It's important to challenge these things. Now we come to the last one, which is one that will definitely resonate with this community, RH's primary ethos, and it's freedom of speech. Blockchains are speech. This is just data and transactions and speech moving around between willing participants. This is extremely important and goes all the way back to why a lot of us participate and why so many of us have the faith that we do in RH. Freedom of speech, and blockchains are speech. It's important. So just wrapping it up, again, I just want to break down a few of the more important points. I encourage everyone to actually go through and read the motion. There is some more difficult to read jargon and language annotations, but it's very digestible. I think people can at least get the main points about what's being brought up there. It brings up good discussion. It's important for people to be educated on the subject. Guys, I'm extremely happy. I like seeing these things work out. I'm sure most of you know I'm relatively interested in the legal aspects and where the market is heading, as a whole. I'm very, very proud of RH to take up the fight. I'm very proud of the community for supporting them the way they have. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Now, again, this is not going to be a short-term thing. There's going to be a lot that comes from this. But as of right now, this is a day to celebrate, and the rest of crypto should rally around this. Like, this is freedom of speech, investment contracts, stopping this corrupt expansion of the SEC. I think this is huge. I think the entire community should be trying to rally crypto around RH and on this case, the same way they did with XRP, the same way they've done with Binance and Coinbase at times. Doesn't mean we get along, doesn't mean we agree about everything, but we can all agree on this. We can agree that blockchains are speech. We can agree that they can't just say things are securities, and we can agree that crypto is here to stay and that we want it to continue to be as decentralized, as peer-to-peer as possible. That's what we came here for. That's what crypto was invented for, guys. We should stand with RH. Let's go.